Imagine a world where the polar ice caps have vanished entirely. Sounds like a scene from a dystopian movie, right? Unfortunately, this could be our reality. Welcome to the startling reality of ice caps melting. The world's polar ice caps, those magnificent shimmering expanses of white, are melting at a rate that's hard to comprehend. According to the National Snow and Ice Data Center, we have seen a decline of more than 10% per decade over the last 40 years in the extent of summer sea ice. That's a loss larger than the state of Texas. But why should we care? What's the big deal about a bit of ice melting at the top and bottom of the world? Well, the polar ice caps are not just pretty features of our planet. They play a crucial role in maintaining our Earth's temperature. Think of the polar ice caps as the world's air conditioning system. They reflect sunlight back into space, helping to keep our planet cool. But as they melt, less sunlight gets reflected and more gets absorbed by the ocean. This absorption leads to a rise in water temperature, causing even more ice to melt. It's a vicious cycle, a feedback loop, and it's happening right now. Moreover, the melting ice caps are not just water. They contain trapped gases like methane, a greenhouse gas much more potent than carbon dioxide. As the ice melts, these gases get released into the atmosphere, further exacerbating global warming. And let's not forget about sea level rise. When the land ice in Antarctica and Greenland melts, it adds to the volume of our oceans, contributing to rising sea levels. This rise threatens coastal cities and islands and disrupts ecosystems worldwide. The polar ice caps are integral to the Earth's climate system, and their melting is a clear sign that we need to act now. The ticking clock of climate change waits for no one. We must face this startling reality head-on, armed with knowledge and a determination to make a difference. Because the future of our icy poles, and indeed our planet, hangs in the balance. Climate change isn't just a buzzword, it's a complex scientific phenomenon directly responsible for the melting of our polar ice caps. To understand how climate change contributes to the melting of polar ice caps, we need to first delve into what climate change is. In its simplest form, climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. The most significant and well-known form of climate change currently occurring is global warming. Global warming is primarily caused by human activities, particularly the burning of fossil fuels like coal and oil, which releases greenhouse gases into the Earth's atmosphere. These gases, such as carbon dioxide and methane, trap heat from the sun and cause the planet's average temperature to rise, a phenomenon known as the greenhouse effect. Now, you might be wondering, how does this tie into the melting of polar ice caps? Well, as the Earth's average temperature rises, so do the temperatures in the polar regions. And when the polar ice caps, which are simply large areas of long-term ice cover, are exposed to these warmer temperatures, they begin to melt. In the Arctic, we've seen an average increase of 2.5 degrees Celsius in the last century alone. While that might not seem like much, it's worth noting that even a small increase in temperature can have a dramatic impact on polar ice. Remember, ice is a delicate entity. It exists in balance with its environment, and even slight changes can disrupt that balance. And it's not just the air that's warming. The ocean, too, is absorbing heat from the atmosphere, and this warmer water is eating away at the ice from below. In fact, the ocean absorbs 4 times as much heat as the atmosphere, accelerating the melting process even further. As a result of this warming, both the Arctic and Antarctic ice caps have been shrinking at alarming rates. In the last 40 years, the Arctic has lost more than half of its summer sea ice cover. And down in Antarctica, the rate of ice loss has nearly tripled in the last decade. These aren't just numbers. They're a stark warning of the impact of climate change on our planet. They're a reminder that our actions have consequences and that those consequences are already unfolding in the form of melting ice caps. But here's the kicker. As the ice melts, it releases more water into the ocean, causing sea levels to rise. This has serious implications for coastal communities around the world, many of which are already experiencing the effects of sea level rise. The science is clear. Climate change is driving the rapid melting of our polar ice caps, but understanding the problem is just the first step. In the next part of this video, we'll explore the consequences of this melting and what it means for our planet and for us. The science is clear. Climate change is driving the rapid melting of our polar ice caps. The melting of polar ice caps isn't just about losing stunning landscapes. The implications are far-reaching and dire for all life on Earth. Think about it this way. The ice caps are like the Earth's air conditioners, reflecting sunlight back into space and keeping our planet cool. When they melt, they reveal the dark ocean surface, which absorbs more sunlight and thus generates more heat. This is a classic example of a positive feedback loop, where the effect enhances the original cause. In this case, more melting leads to more heat, which leads to even more melting. The first and most obvious consequence of this process is the rise in sea levels. You see, when the ice that is on land, like the massive Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets, melts, it flows into the oceans. And when you add more water to the ocean, well, the sea levels rise. This isn't rocket science, it's just plain old physics. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, if greenhouse gas emissions continue at the current rate, sea levels could rise by up to 2 feet by the end of this century. This might not sound like much, but for coastal cities and small island nations, it could mean the difference between staying dry and becoming the next Atlantis. But the consequences of polar ice caps melting extend beyond rising sea levels. It's also about the loss of habitats. Consider the iconic polar bear, a species that depends on sea ice for its survival. It uses the ice as a platform to hunt seals, its primary food source. As the ice melts, the polar bear's hunting grounds are disappearing, and with them, their chances of survival. The US Geological Survey predicts that 2/3 of the world's polar bears could disappear by the mid-21st century if sea ice continues to shrink at its current pace. Then there's the impact on weather patterns. The polar ice caps play a crucial role in regulating the Earth's climate. They help to balance the global temperature and drive the world's weather patterns. As the ice caps melt, this balance is disrupted. This can lead to extreme weather events like hurricanes and droughts becoming more frequent and more intense. And let's not forget about the impact on humans. Rising sea levels can lead to flooding and displacement of people. Changes in weather patterns can affect agriculture, leading to food shortages. Loss of habitats can lead to loss of biodiversity, which can disrupt ecosystems and impact the resources we depend on. So, you see, the melting of polar ice caps isn't just an environmental issue. It's a social issue, an economic issue, a political issue. It's an issue that affects every single one of us, whether we live in the Arctic Circle or the equator, whether we're rich or poor, whether we're young or old. The melting of the polar ice caps could trigger a domino effect of environmental disasters. So, let's not turn a blind eye to this crisis. Let's face it head on, because our future and the future of our planet depends on it. We're all part of the problem. Our actions as a collective have contributed to the rapid melting of the polar ice caps. It's a harsh reality to face, but necessary if we are to understand our role in this global issue and work towards solutions. Our planet's ice caps are not just melting because of natural climate fluctuations. They're melting at an accelerated rate due to a phenomenon known as the greenhouse effect, which is largely driven by human activities. So, how does this work? Well, When we burn fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas for energy, we release carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. These gases trap heat from the sun, causing the Earth's average temperature to rise, a process we know as global warming. This warming is not uniform across the planet. The Arctic is heating up twice as fast as the global average, causing the ice caps to melt at an alarming rate. Consider this. In the mid-19th century, the start of the Industrial Revolution, the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was about 280 parts per million. Today, that number has soared to over 400 parts per million. That's a staggering increase of over 40% in less than 2 centuries, and it's primarily due to human activities. But it's not just the burning of fossil fuels that's causing the problem. Deforestation is another significant contributor. Trees absorb carbon dioxide, helping to regulate the Earth's climate. When we cut down forests for agriculture, urban development, or logging, we not only lose these natural carbon sinks, but we also release the stored carbon back into the atmosphere, further exacerbating the greenhouse effect. The situation is dire, but not hopeless. There are actions we can take to slow down the melting of the polar ice caps. Yes, we've contributed to this crisis, but we also hold the power to mitigate its impact. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution, but a combination of strategies that can help us turn the tide. First, reducing carbon emissions is key. This means reevaluating the ways we produce and consume energy. By switching to renewable energy sources like wind, solar, and hydro, we not only decrease our dependence on fossil fuels, but also significantly cut down on the amount of greenhouse gases we release into the atmosphere. Next, promoting renewable energy isn't just about installing solar panels on rooftops or building wind farms. It's about creating a culture that values and prioritizes clean energy. This involves everything from government policy and corporate responsibility to individual choices and behaviors. Then, there's the protection of forests. Forests are nature's own carbon capture and storage system. They absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, store it in their trunks, roots, and leaves, and release oxygen back into the air. By protecting and expanding our forests, we can significantly reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But let's not forget about the importance of individual and collective action. Every choice we make, from the cars we drive to the food we eat, has an impact on the environment. By making conscious, sustainable choices, we can all play a part in mitigating the impact of climate change. And finally, there's the role of collective action. Governments, businesses, and organizations around the world must work together to implement policies and practices that promote sustainability and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The future of our polar ice caps and our planet rests in our hands. This is not a problem for future generations to solve. It's a challenge for us here and now. And with determination, innovation, and collaboration, we can rise to it. In the past 15 minutes, we've taken a deep dive into the alarming reality of polar ice caps melting due to climate change. Our planet's icy extremities, the polar ice caps, are more than just stunning landscapes. They play a pivotal role in maintaining our global climate, and their rapid melting is a signal of the dire consequences of climate change. We've explored the science behind this phenomenon. We understand now that increasing carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere, primarily from human activity, trap heat and raise the Earth's average temperature. This global warming is causing the ice caps to melt at an unprecedented rate. We've also examined the potential consequences of this melting. Rising sea levels, changes in ocean currents, and the impact on wildlife are just some of the devastating effects. Coastal cities could be inundated, and the loss of habitats could lead to the extinction of many polar species. But it's not all doom and gloom. We've also discussed how we can help. By reducing our carbon emissions, advocating for climate friendly policies, and supporting renewable energy, we can slow down the melting of the polar ice caps. We can make a difference, and it starts with understanding and taking action. Remember, the polar ice caps aren't just far off icy wilderness. They're an integral part of our world, our climate, and our future. Their melting isn't just an environmental issue, it's a humanitarian one too. We've taken this journey today to understand and appreciate the urgency of the situation. It's crucial to remember that our actions have consequences, and our choices today will shape the world of tomorrow. The polar ice caps are a vital part of our planet's climate system. Their fate, and ours, is intertwined with the choices we make today.